morning. What's happening, guys? And welcome back to Tuesday Training. We missed you last week. Sorry about that. We had some technical problems here, but we're back with episode 21. And man, we got a doozy for you today. I'm super excited about this one. So for all of you guys out there that are interested in the commercial insurance side of property and casualty, if you're thinking about getting into commercial, or maybe you're already in commercial and you just want to do a little bit better, well, we got somebody coming on the show today that's going to help you kill it in commercial insurance, and that's the topic today, killing it in commercial. And I go ahead and dubbed it Volume 1 because, in my opinion, we're going to bring this guy back for Volumes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 if we have to. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a regular on the show. But first, a couple of quick news blurbs I want to chat about real fast. Again, for all you P&C agents out there, I saw this on Yahoo Finance. ZenDrive is now adding Progressive Insurance to their insurance qualification lens platform. So if you're not familiar with that, basically ZenDrive is a program that kind of tracks how well you drive. And it taps in through different apps like MoneyLion, Coin, Pogo. There's a whole bunch of other ones that they use. But basically it has what they call it, their insurance qualification lens program, right? And this helps insurers offer personalized auto rates for safe drivers by embedding a driver safety SDK into the leading consumer apps and fintech, home security rewards, driver safety categories, etc. So for all you guys that are out there selling Progressive auto insurance, well, you're going to be able to tap into this here pretty soon. So they don't have a launch date on it, but that acquisition or that addition was announced this morning. Something else that I've been chatting about, and this isn't in the P&C category, but this is in the Medicaid category. You've heard me, if you've been following me or listened to me a little bit, I have been talking about this for a while. This article popped out. This is a Michigan article specifically. So Michigan is saying that they could possibly lose 700,000 people, 700,000 people could lose Medicaid. The stop date, the redetermination date on that is April 1st. And this is because the government basically said, hey, the end of the pandemic officially is April 1st. So all those extensions they've been giving Medicaid, well, all that comes to an end on April 1st. So a lot of people are going to have to be redetermined. You're going to have a lot of people that lose Medicaid. So if you're in the ACA space, you're going to have people that lose their subsidy. And if you're in the Medicare space, you're going to have people that are going to get SEPs because they're going to get bounced off of their DSNP plans, for example, and have the opportunity to go to a regular plan, maybe back to original Medicare only, whatever the case might be. That is, I can't remember the exact number across the U.S., but it's several million people. But I mean, like I said, just in Michigan, they're projecting as many as 700,000. So if I'm a guy out there and I know I got Medicaid people in my book, people that are getting subsidies, people that are on the DSNP plans or so forth, I'm probably going to start, making a list and compiling those people and get ready, because some of those people you're going to have to address after April 1st and get them requalified or get them on a new plan. So some pretty interesting stuff there. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and get our guest up here, man. This guy is a superstar in P&C and in commercial insurance. He is the owner of Florida Risk Partners. He's also a two-time author, and I've read one of his books, The Extra 2 Minutes, which is an awesome book on how you can get a little more productivity out of every single day. And certainly there's always an extra 2 minutes in your day if you just think about it. And he's also the author of Dirty 30, another very popular 5-star book that I found on Amazon. I've yet to read it, but I got a copy coming, and I'm definitely going to jump on that. But I want to bring him up here, chat with him a bit, and then we're going to let him coach you guys on some commercial insurance. What's going on, Mr. David Carothers? How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. If you're going to touch Dirty 130, you better put on some oven mitts, man, because that thing is sizzling. It will make you work. I can promise you that. It is an instruction manual for anybody who wants to win in anything. It's not even necessarily designed specifically for commercial insurance. It's sales in general. I mean, I didn't want to necessarily limit my audience if the same tools apply across the board, but we can get deeper into that here in a little bit.
Yeah. What's kind of the premise of the Dirty 130?
So I'm a big believer that I don't think agency principals know how to manage producers the right way. By and large, we get so worried about the results and we manage results. The problem is that the activity has already happened and you can't go back and fix it, right? So the Dirty 130 is all about a challenge to teach people the behaviors they need to have to be successful in building their personal brand, getting the word out as a producer for what they're doing, and then committing to do that. So the 130 comes from two different places. Number one, 130 is the number of working days in 6 months. So my theory is that if you can commit to the behaviors that I teach and execute them for 6 months, it's going to change your career forever. You'll never have to work that hard again. Number two, the other 130 is the premise for the activities that we monitor here at Florida Risk Partners, and that is 30 in-person cold call marketing drops every week, coupled with 100 intentional phone calls every week. So we can get to 130 a bunch of different ways, and that theme is woven throughout the book. But at the end of the day, I would tell anybody, if you don't want to put in the work, don't waste your time reading it, because it's not going to do you any good if you just read it and don't execute. It's just another idea at that point.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we got a link in the comments. So any of you guys that are looking for that book, it's in the comments. Go ahead and grab you a copy. Other than that, it's kind of, I know a lot of people know you in the industry, right? And I'm not a big PNC guy. You know that. I can't even spell PNC. I'm all in the life and health and Medicare space. But what I want to, for some of the viewers out here that maybe don't know who you are, right? How long have you been in insurance?
I have been in the insurance industry for 20 years. I walked in to an agency about 20 years ago on the first day and was told that I needed to go out and produce accounts that were $250,000 to $500,000 in premium. I said, how do I do that? And their answer was, you're the sales guy. You'll figure it out. We have all the insurance people here you need, but you got to go make it rain. And so it's like the old Abraham Lincoln story. When they tell you that you have to have an hour to chop down a tree, you need to spend the first 45 minutes sharpening your axe. That's kind of what I did. I took the first, 2 months probably of my career and really honed in on what I wanted my process to be, built my leads lists the right way, began to research prospects, understood who my carrier partners were going to be that were going to be my go-tos on the journey. And then I went out and produced, as opposed to the standard of, hey, we're going to give you a $25,000 draw, go out and call all your family, friends, and bring everything in. Your job's to go get deck pages. I didn't want to do that, man. I was in an agency where there were a lot of blue bloods, people that were second, third generation South Tampa, who had long-lasting family relationships and parents who had never-ending Rolodexes, allegedly. But I also knew that I had none of that. And so I needed to build an organic system so that I could go out and produce business and continue to do it year after year, long after those mommy and daddy leads dried up.
Understood. And at this point, you are now running Florida Risk Partners. How long have you been running that show?
So I launched FRP in July 1 of 2016. So we are coming up on year number 7. The agency is almost 100% middle market commercial in the 5 counties surrounding Tampa Bay. I do not write outside of Florida unless it's something that's incidental to one of my accounts. Florida is its own animal and unique marketplace in property and casualty. There are a lot of outsiders who think they want to come in and get a bite at the apple. I'd be happy to let you have it. Come take that cat exposure off of my profit sharing any day of the week and let me focus on casualty business. And so, you can't be really, really good at a lot of things. So we just chose to be experts in the areas that we serve. And it's done us very, very well. The agency ended up last year at just a hair over $4 million in agency revenue. And just so everybody understands, when you hear me talk numbers, unless I specifically say premium, everything I'm talking about is commissionable revenue today. The people who talk about premium are the ones who aren't proud of their revenue, right? It's a bigger number. They need to do that to feel good about themselves. But if you need to draft your account for payroll, it's not going to be your premium account you're drafting. It's your operating account, and only revenue goes in there. So we talk about the real money. Premiums for show, revenues the dough, premiums for vanity, revenues for sanity. I can go all day with my rhymes. I just want everybody to understand numbers are revenue today. And I'll give you examples. I'll try and make most of them fictitious. But if I do happen to give numbers, please understand it's not me bragging. I don't need to pat myself on the back. My wife and kids are well taken care of. And that's all I really need for validation in life. It's simply to give you examples of some of the things that we see so that you can draw a correlation to some of the things you may have experienced, because many times people just don't understand how much different it is to operate in middle market commercial versus the typical small business you see in Main Street agencies.
Excellent. Now I'm going to assume that most of my audience is smarter than me, but I don't. What is middle market commercial? If you could
But
expand on
that's
that, what
actually
is
a
that?
great question, man. Middle market's whatever you want it to be. It's whatever it makes sense for you. You know, if I were to give you a rough rule of thumb for purposes of this crew, I would say it's accounts that are anywhere between 25,000 in premium on the low end up to $500,000 to $1 million. If you start getting much north of that, you're going to be dealing with Marsh, Willis, Aon, and some of the multinational brokers who, I mean, it's not even a matter of them bringing out and giving you the training program. They have the guy on staff that wrote the training program. So I don't want to compete against them. I'm also sophisticated enough in our tech stack and the deliverables that we give that we're quite frankly above the competency of the local agency who's never been involved in middle market before. And that's not a knock on them. It's a fact that they've stuck with what they've known, which is small commercial and personal lines, and never really just thought about pushing to that next level. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, man. There are plenty of people out there far more wealthy than me that are running Main Street agencies with multiple locations, and it served them very, very well. Just keep in mind, I only know one thing, middle market commercial. Why? Because that's what I did the first day I came into the agency, and it's all I'm ever going to do in the agency, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, guys, for all the audience out there, get your notebooks ready, get your questions ready, because this guy's about to teach you how to kill it in commercial insurance. And with that said, Mr. Carothers, the floor is yours.
Thank you, my man. So listen, I'm going to walk you guys through a few concepts that I want to talk about today. The first one is that a producer has to be able to define what their behaviors are going to be. And if you're an agency principal listening to this, that's on you to teach them what you want and how you want them to do that. And if you're a producer on here and you haven't done that, that's a big problem. Like, what are you doing? What are you holding yourself accountable to if you don't have a daily list of set behaviors that you're using? And so how you get to that is really kind of easy. If you're any good at all in math, then you can do this. Figure out what you want to make every year. How much salary do I want to make? How much income do I want to have come into my household so that I can provide for my family and buy stuff that I like when I want it and live comfortably and financially free, and determine what that number is. And then you just work backwards from there, right? You know what your commission split is. You know how much revenue you have to write in order to get to your earnings. And then you start tracking back and back and back. The first one is, how many people do you have to pitch to in order to close a deal? How many people do you have to do marketing drops to in order to get the opportunity to pitch to them? And you need to define how many of each of those things you need to do on an annual basis and then divide it back into monthly and yearly. And you're going to figure out pretty quickly that you can have a defined set of behaviors that you can do every single week that will lead to success. This is not a difficult industry for us to be in. The problem is people are inherently lazy. They don't want to make the phone calls. They don't want to do the marketing drops. And they're going to give you a bunch of excuses about how they're not comfortable doing that or it's not something that they like. But at the end of the day, why are you in the industry if you're not willing to do those things? So those are the things you have to do. Now, the beauty of it is, in commercial insurance, we have the ability to go in and we pick who we want to represent. I don't have to rely on inbound leads unless I want to. I don't have to rely on digital marketing unless I want to. Those are certainly tools that we have in our toolbox. But if I wanted to be just gut level honest with you, my number one chances of success as a commercial producer in the middle market is for me to create a leads list, do research on those leads, and go out and knock on those doors, have conversations, and ultimately write business. Now, that's a mouthful, right? But it's not just about that. It's your messaging. What are you going to say when you do have those conversations? What are you going to say when you're on the phone or when you're cold calling somebody and you're in that lobby having a conversation? I'm going to say something that's probably going to take some people aback a little bit. I don't mean any offense by it, but I'm going to say it anyhow. In the end, and it's this. Your prospects don't care about insurance. They do not care at all. They want to know that they have a policy, that they're covered, and if they need it, it's going to respond and pay a claim. That's it. That's all they care about. Yet I can't tell you the number of times that I hear people vomiting features and benefits, meaning coverage extensions, endorsements, exclusions, and all of these things. They are talking themselves out of business. Your client and your prospect does not care about how insurance works, what's in the policy, or anything else. And when I was started into this industry, the trick is, and still is to this day to a certain extent, let me get your deck pages. Let me get copies of your policies. I want to do a coverage review for you. And then I'm going to come back and tell you all of the things that are wrong with your insurance policy and highlight how bad the other agent is. So hopefully you're going to be able to go in and, make that person look bad enough that they're going to decide they're going to hire you. What a horrible strategy. Why do I want to go in and win business by trashing somebody else? I would much prefer to be hired because I'm the overwhelmingly most logical option based on my presentation. I don't care what anybody else does. In fact, in my career, I've never asked clients for deck pages. Very, very rarely do I ask. And the reason why is I tell them, I'm not here to copy off of somebody else's homework. I know how to do the insurance piece. That's not your problem. So I tell you all of that because I wanted to set the table for how business really does get done in the middle market. Now, there are certainly plenty of price buyers out there, and there are certainly plenty of people out there that are still doing the old coverage review. But I look back and think about how hard they're working, how much effort they're putting into these things, and how little return they get on it when you have a close rate of 10 or 20% based on where you enter these people, enter the relationship in the funnel, right? And so I would submit to you this. If you're in middle market insurance, if you want to write accounts $25,000 to $500,000 in premium, the easiest way for you to do that is to get hired before you ever worry about the insurance. We are hired sometimes 10 months before renewal, sometimes 6 months before renewal, sometimes 3 months before renewal. But we are hired every single time in every single engagement before renewal. I will never allow my compensation to hinge on the placement of an insurance product and me having to get pricing down below everybody else and hope that an underwriter can perform for me. I'm going to sell on my value proposition 10 out of 10 times. And I know from the number of times that I have given this exact, thought process in public that there are already people shaking their heads. That's okay. You're the ones I'm taking business from. Keep not listening to what I say, and you will continue to lose accounts to guys like me that understand that there is a floor to premium. You can only negotiate price so low on an insurance transaction, and then you're done. Then you're reliant on hoping somebody else doesn't have a better market or that somebody didn't come in and understate exposures to drop the premium, and you don't get the ability to explain that to a prospect. I don't want to compete against anybody on the insurance transaction. I want to compete on my value proposition, and then I want to go to market, and that's where we get paid. The problem is the product is what pays people, so we focus on that. If all we were to do is shift our focus from selling a product to solving a problem, we would all be making way more money than what we're making right now, and we would have a lot happier clients, and our retention would be through the roof. What do I mean by that? Well, I can tell you, I'll use workers' comp as an example, but we can use general liability or cyber or any other coverage. But with workers' comp being the example, we know in Florida, we have state mandated rates. It does not matter if I go to 100 different insurance companies. If my payrolls by class code are the same across the board, that bottom line number on a quote for workers' comp in Florida is going to be the same, plus or minus maybe $100, just depending on rounding and everything, right? So we can go negotiate dividends based on good performance, and that's what agents do. Hey, you're going to pay this much, but I got you a 45% dividend on a 0% loss ratio. Great job, guy. Let me tell you what you did. You represented to a client or a prospect, rather, that they're going to get 45% back because this is what they heard at the end of the year if they have good performance. What are you going to do to assure that? What are you going to do to help them get that 0% loss ratio? And how realistic is it for you to make that your pitch when you're talking to somebody who's got an experience modification factor of 2.2? It's impossible. So why not focus on all of the things that they're not doing, all of the things that they're not getting, so that they know that if they fix those things, they're always going to get the best result. When we talk to a prospect, we're never talking about premium. We're talking about the total cost of risk, period. Because that's the numbers that are affecting the financial statements. Premium is a factor in total cost of risk, but it's not the only thing. There are other things that are in total cost of risk, like the cost to hire somebody to come in and train forklift drivers, or the overtime that's paid in the event that you have injured workers and you have to pay your staff to stick around longer to cover the other person's job that can't perform it due to injury, or the cost of the administrative branch of the operation having to deal with workers' compensation claims administration, unemployment, or going in front of a workers' comp judge to have something heard at trial or to be deposed. There could be other soft costs associated with claims like lost revenue there. But in addition to that, there are things like retained losses. Those are the losses that are actively retained inside of a deductible or a retention because we knew we were doing that when we bought the policy. Or it could be those claims that aren't covered because we didn't, put those mechanisms in place, and we had an exclusion or something that didn't have something covered. So as a result, we ended up eating that. But never do you see, very, very rarely will you see an insurance agent who goes out to meet with somebody at renewal and looks at them and starts quantifying all of these other things, right? Hey, just out of curiosity, when you had the 3 housekeepers out last year with workers' compensation injuries, what was the rate of rentals on the rooms that you have here at the resort? Because I have to believe you didn't get through all of the house keeping in time to turn the rooms. You had to lose some revenue there, right? Well, yeah, we were losing X number of dollars a day. Wow. And how many days did that happen? Well, they were out for 2 weeks. So take that number, multiply it by 14 and add it to the premium. Oh, that's a different number now, right? What about deductibles? I noticed you've got a deductible on here. Did you pay any claims inside the deductible layer? Well, yeah, we paid 2 or 3. How many dollars was that? Add it to the premium in the lost revenue, right? You can see where I'm going with this. And as you start piecing this together and you show a prospect how much is really there in the pie, not just the premium, you're going to blow their mind, because the reality in all of this is if you can fix everything outside of the premium, you're always going to get the best premium result. And the reason why is not even because you're going to get the risk cleaned up in 6 months. It's because you've been engaged in learning from them and understanding their operations and finding all of those things that are contributed to a negative underwriting outcome. And you're putting processes and procedures in place that will stand the test of time, that will continue to help them drive down and control those costs. And when you do that, you make that a material part of the submission that you send into an underwriter, so that the underwriter sees this isn't just an agent out there pencil whipping accord forms, throwing me loss runs and hoping that I give him a number. This dude is in there. Here's a video of what he saw when he did his own baseline risk assessment. Here's the report from the third-party loss control person that he brought in to handle the issues they were having with manual material handling. This is great. Here's the OSHA compliant training logs that they did for manual or material safety data sheets, right? HAZCOM. It's a huge OSHA problem. And you'll go in and you'll ask somebody, hey, where's your MSDS sheets? And they can take you to the binder. Usually it's got 3 inches of dust on it, if it's even visible. And at the end of the day, nobody's been trained on what the binder even means. When we put a submission in, we're sending all of the training around the problem areas in, showing that we have been proactively working on this before we ever went to the marketplace for the insurance piece. Now, the question always becomes, how do you get paid if you're working, 6 months ahead of time, 10 months ahead of time? Well, the answer is simple. When you move into the middle market, depending on where you're at, you don't take commission. You may not take a commission from the people that you're working for, and instead you take a service fee for them. Now, this is not the same thing as a fee that you add on to an excess and surplus policy in Texas or California or the places where you can do that. What I'm talking about is 100% of my compensation is derived directly from a service fee that I directly charge my client. Our industry is so fickle. We complain, we moan about the fact we want to be trusted advisors. We want to be treated like attorneys and accountants, and yet we still operate on a commission. Unless you're an injury lawyer, you're charging a fee for your time. If you're an accountant, you're charging a fee for your time. Why should we be any different? See, if you went back and did the things I told you to do at the very beginning and you work back to figure out what you're doing, what you need to be doing every single day, you're going to have those predetermined behaviors, and you're going to understand how long it takes you to do those, and you're going to know how much commission you make at the end of the year, and you can go back and figure out all of those hours, divide your commission by that number, and now you have an hourly rate. One of the biggest issues that new producers have is they've never taken the time to identify the behaviors, and they haven't taken the time to project what they want their hourly rate to be at the end of the year. They have no idea walking in the door, but they have to take the time to figure that out. You may find that you've been out writing small business just because you feel like you're getting something done. A big problem in our industry is people confuse activity with productivity. They're not the same. I could write one BOP that's $5,000 or less in premium, and if it is not a class code that is in my preferred business that I like to write, that is going to require a ton of servicing, I'm going to lose money on that account because I'm servicing it far more than I am an account that's paying me $50,000 a year. It's just a completely different animal. And so when we go in and we talk about service fee, the way that it works is you have to declare, number one, you have to make sure in your state you're allowed to do it. Florida's not the only one, but some states will not let you take a service fee. You need to check with your state and see if you're allowed. If you are, when you go to the insurance, get to the insurance transaction, you're just simply going to tell your underwriter to net the commissions out of the quote. Now the quote's going to drop by the 15% or whatever your commissionable revenue is from that quote, and it's going to lower it so that your client saves money on the premium end. That's how I'm able to go bill them and not charge them more money. The premium offsets what I charge in the fee. But here's the other thing. Our compensation models are backwards. They're backwards. Period. Don't argue with me. I know this for a fact. There's no other industry where we could go in and do an absolutely horrible job for somebody, and when their premium goes up, get a raise. There's no other industry like that. When I ran grocery stores, if I expected a stocker to stock 60 cases an hour and I came into work and they only stocked 10, I am not giving that guy or that lady a raise. In fact, they're going to be lucky if they're back at work tomorrow. They're not hitting their numbers. Why is our compensation put that way? So here's what we do when we go in. And I'm going to use an example of an account up in North Carolina that I wrote a number of years ago. I like to give two different options, and I'm going to explain why. The first one is, I went into this account. This account was paying a little over $2 million a year in premium. The commissions on it was about $250,000. The agent was getting paid far too much. He wasn't doing anything at all to help the account. They were averaging $437,000 in out-of-pocket loss costs for the 5 years prior to us meeting with them. And when we walked into the meeting for the first time, I looked around and I asked the CFO, I said, "Where's your risk manager?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, where's your risk manager?" I said, "You're paying $250,000 a year to an agency. Certainly they're giving you a risk manager, right?" And they said, "Well, no, we only see him about, maybe twice a year, once at renewal, once in the middle of the year." I said, "You got to be kidding me." And so the reason that this particular account, which was an egg laying facility, my God, I can't even imagine what the inventory is there right now, but it was an egg distribution facility. They had 5 million chickens in really bad construction. If you don't know what an old school laying house looks like, it's frame and it's like balsa wood. The wind's going to blow it over. It'll spontaneously combust if you stare at it hard enough. Like, it's really bad construction. So the reason the premium was high wasn't because the agent was doing a lot of work. It was a matter of the circumstances of the underwriting profile of the account. And it wasn't fair to the client. The only thing the agent had at risk was whether or not they were going to get carpal tunnel syndrome from having to write extra zeros on an accord form when they filled the applications out. It was ludicrous. So as we got in and we did our baseline risk assessment to understand the operations and see where the losses were coming from and what was driving that, we figured out pretty quickly we didn't need anywhere near $250,000 to service a heavily property-driven account. So when we went in and pitched our deal, we gave them the baseline risk assessment results, and we showed them the risk management action plan, which is actually the document that governs our relationship over the course of the year, that breaks what we found on the risk assessment report down into actionable steps that are updated monthly, quarterly, however frequently we need to, depending on the risk profile of the account, But that's the accountability piece so that we don't have to do a stewardship report at the end of the year because our client knows what we've been doing for them in real time. And so we want to do that. We want to have that because we want to commit to what we're going to execute, but we also want to establish KPIs in what we want to do. So on that particular account, we went in and said, we will do this deal for $87,500 a year in fee. But David, that's like $167,500 less than you would have made on commission. Yeah, you're right. But I also had that account for a long time before I launched Florida Risk for this reason. So we go in and we say 87.5. But if you want to skin the deal a different way, we will do the deal for $75,000. And for every $100,000 that we reduce your total cost of risk, your total out-of-pocket losses over the course of the year, we get a $10,000 bonus. So that your worst case scenario is if you pay me $100,000, you will have saved $250,000. What a novel concept. Think about it from this perspective. If I go into an account that's got workers' comp problems and the premium is currently at $50,000 and you net the commissions out and you charge them a $50,000 fee, let's just say you need to charge the fee equal to the commission on this one because you're going to have some heavy lifting, but you go in and you do your job and 3 years later, the account is now $250,000 in premium because you've achieved their minimum mod. If I was selling a product that had commission tied to it, I would have done my job in a best-in-class manner. And the reward I would have gotten is a 50% pay cut. If you're on a service fee, that's not the case. I still get paid $50,000 and I saved my client $250,000. And in fact, I'm going to go back to that client and say, I just saved you $250,000 a year over the last 3 years. I don't think it's out of line for me to ask for a $25,000 raise. For crying out loud, it's only 10% of your 1 year savings. And I will get a raise to $75,000 in fee to continue to drive their costs down. Agents don't do that because, number one, it's typically only done at the national account level, and it doesn't register when you're dealing with BOPs. It's got to be an account that's the right size, but if you can have that conversation, you will win 10 out of 10 times. We have an account here that builds solar farms, okay? They're a solar contractor, but they do nothing on roofs, nothing with height exposure. They build giant fields of the huge articulating solar panels. So what happens? Well, what happened was they came to us because they weren't happy with their existing representation, and I cut a deal with them. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll get to work on this. We need to reopen your last audit. I don't feel like it was accurate. Your class code was wrong. I think we can recover some money. I'm willing to come and work for you for free right now, knowing that we will handle your renewal if you sign my letter of engagement. But we need to get started on this immediately, and we can take found money and use that to fund our activities to get this thing polished up and off to the underwriters so that we can get you the best underwriting result at renewal. But I want to make sure that we do that without having you take any money out of pocket. So we'll split the money with you 50-50 on anything that we find. They came back to me and said, we would rather split it 70% for us, 30% for you. I was fine with that. It still found money for them. I wasn't going to argue over a little bit. The moral of the story is we went back to the carrier. We opened up the audit. We found out that I was, in fact, correct. We recovered $1.3 million in premium, and I got 30% of it for 2.5 hours worth of work. $400,000 plus in money, hard cash, in my pocket for 2.5 hours worth of work because we solved a problem. And what did that do? That allowed us to now have a better submission than anybody else. We had it coded right, and we went in and we handled the renewal. If you can get hired before the insurance comes into play, you will never have competition on the insurance itself. What kind of power do you think I have in negotiating with an underwriter when I can unequivocally tell them the number they have to hit and guarantee them the bind order? When I sell my value proposition and place the insurance second, I can tell that I become the decision maker for the insurance. I become the decision maker that's going to advise my client on the route to go. Why? Because they're paying me a fee for my best advice. If I go in and say, listen, I know you only paid $5,000 last year for your cyber, but it's really going to be $22,000 this year. I know it's going to be some heartburn, but here are the reasons why you're going to have a $17,000 increase. Part of it's market climate. Part of it is some things that you didn't understand, like you've got to pay a reimbursement form on your cyber as opposed to pay on behalf of, and the carrier doesn't have as much exposure in that situation. So it's easier for us just to put this on a pay on behalf of form and let them handle the claim all along. And you can have those conversations with people because they know that you don't have a financial incentive. So your advice isn't going to be skewed one way or the other. That's why it works well for attorneys. That's why it works well for accountants. The problem is we have conditioned the buyer the wrong way. It's our fault people are price buyers. It's our fault people don't understand the stuff outside of premium because we haven't done a good enough job of educating them. And the reason why is because we don't do a good job of educating ourselves. We laugh, we joke. I see it in the internet forums all the time about people who say, oh, continuing ed's coming up again. I guess I'll spend 10 minutes pencil whipping it. Great job, guy. You just really did a service to our industry by not taking your continuing ed seriously. And don't get me wrong, I'm not somebody over here that's uber conservative, that's uptight, and thinks that everybody has to do everything to the letter of the law. I'm actually a gunslinger. But the problem that we have in our industry is people don't know what they're doing. I see it every single day, and I'm sure people who are on here see it every single day too. And if you don't see it every single day, maybe next place you want to look is the mirror because you may be the one that's doing it. You got to take your continuing ed seriously. You got to get your CIC. You got to get a CRM. You got to go get that CPCU and be the best version of yourself on the streets that you possibly can be to set yourself up for success, because ultimately we are the ones that have to teach people how to buy insurance. We are the ones who have taught them all along, right? There is no college course that says how to procure insurance for my middle market company. They learn from the market, and we're the ones that are in the marketplace. So when people say, oh, you want to bid my insurance this year, a lot of people turn their nose up at that and say, no, I'm not going to do that because you're just shopping on price. I'm going to take a first meeting every single time because I know that if I don't, there's a 100% chance I'm not going to write that account. And it also tells me I don't believe in myself enough to go in, lay out the way we would recommend doing things, and be persuasive enough in that process to teach that person something and change their mind. And I'm not going to tell you that it happens every time, but the fact of the matter is somebody who wants you to quote their insurance or bid their insurance has never had anybody explain broker selection to them. They've never had somebody sit down and explain why picking the agent and then letting that agent go out and do all the work for you, control the marketplace, leverage carriers against each other is going to get you the best bet. It's better than market selection. It's better than request per proposal, all of those things. Broker selection. And what does that end with? It ends with an agent of record letter. But that's a nasty word because payroll companies have abused it, right? They slide that AOR in the onboarding paperwork and take one of your accounts from you, and you get that notification from the carrier, and you lose your mind because you've worked so hard for that account. You can't believe they don't appreciate you, let alone the fact they didn't even understand what they signed. Happened to me last week. Happened to me with paychecks. I went on Twitter and called them out for it, right? Here's the problem. You got shady people out there who aren't educating the client. They're not telling them what they're signing. Who's going to tell them any different? We have to. And I actually put a post up that not only showed my conversation with paychecks, but I also took the screenshot that showed that 1 minute of time elapsed from when I sent the e-sign on the AOR to when it was signed and returned to me to rescind that, because my client had no clue that that was slipped in. But the problem is, it goes back to what I said. It's people selling products, not solving problems. The way that I view insurance is a commoditized shuffling of paperwork. That's it. Cost of doing business. You have to have it. In some cases, like workers' comp, it's statutory. I tell my prospects that insurance is the funding mechanism for you to be able to afford the value proposition that we've laid out for you today. If you want all of this stuff that we talked about, all of these things that we can do with boots on the ground to solve your problems, clean up your risk profile, and ultimately get you the best results in the marketplace, all I need you to do is move your insurance relationship to us. We can handle the insurance. That's the easy part. It's everything else that you're not getting that we're able to do. And in many cases, I walk in and introduce myself at the beginning of the meeting as the guy who delivers what everybody else promises. And it's really that simple. If you're in a meeting and you look left and you look right, you're going to find out pretty quick that one of those two people is average at best. That's just the way that it works in the insurance world. Those are the people you're competing against on the street every single day. You wouldn't go play a college or a professional baseball game without taking batting practice, without working in the weight room, without running steps, without doing your cardio training, without doing your stretching and all of those things. Why in the world, as agents, do we not take our livelihoods more seriously and equip ourselves to be the 5-tool players that every single person on this call has the potential to be?
Boom. Wow. I feel like we should have a moment of silence for all of the agents that David just slaughtered. Yeah.
So I know there were some questions come up. I did not see them.
Yeah, no, I got them right here. We got a few. I'm going to kick one off for you right now. Here we go from Ryan England. Is your main revenue stream the fee or the commission?
Good question, Ryan. It just, if you're talking about me personally, that's a different answer than the agency, because COVID sort of changed things a little bit. We used to do a $5,000 revenue minimum for any account that we brought in. Once COVID happened and we weren't able to go out and knock on doors and started doing more meetings over Zoom, we were actually more efficient in what we could cover in a day. And so we would go in and we wrote smaller accounts that we normally wouldn't write. It didn't hurt us any that companies like AmTrust came out and gave us 22 points on new business. So, I could go out and write a $25,000 account and get the same, 5,000 plus in revenue that I would if I was writing a $50,000 account at 10%. So we shifted a little bit. The other thing is it's tough in Florida, just because it is state administered pricing. So if, in our agency, we either represent you or we don't. I'm not going to just go write your workers' comp and then, hope I can win your GL. If I'm going to manage your total cost of risk, I'm going to manage your total cost of risk. I'm not going to do it with a helper that I don't know, on the other side of town who maybe, was able to get you a Cincinnati policy. You either want what we do or you don't. I'm not offended if you don't, but that's just the way that it works. And the reason I bring that up is in Florida, we have state administered pricing on workers' comp, and the commission rates are embedded into that. So if I were to go to Summit, for example, and say, hey, I know you quoted this thing at $500,000, I'd like it net of commission, Summit's going to come back to me and say, you know what, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. The premium is still $500,000, but we're going to keep the 50 for us instead of giving it to you. That's how it works. So when we put these deals together, we have to be careful, because when you do a fee, you have to have a fee agreement in place, and it has to outline exactly what that fee covers. So we would say something like risk management services, including but not limited to claims administration, on-site visits, blah, blah, blah. The negotiation and placement of insurance coverages, with the exception of workers' compensation, right? So workers' compensation is now not contemplated in the fee agreement. We'll take the commission from the carrier for that. And I will use that when I calculate what I think the fee needs to be. If I was at, $75,000 for the fee, I'm not going to go to the client for 75 grand. I'm going to go to them for 25. And I'm going to take the 50 from the carrier, because that's in my client's best interest. I'll let the carrier pay me the commission and charge the same rate. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. So all that to say, because of that, a lot of our workers, every one of our workers' comp accounts is on a commission. So that kind of skews it. But if you look at my personal book of business and my overall relationships, the overwhelming majority of those, probably 70 to 75% of those, are service fee based. Fee equals the commission that may come at binding. It just depends on how much work I have to do. That's the beauty of knowing how many hours you're going to have to put in, your hourly rate. You can actually put together a really accurate proposal. There are times, like the example that I gave in North Carolina, where the fee just wasn't equitable for the client, and we were able to go in and charge them a fair rate, win the business. We made plenty of money. We delivered for them. I didn't tell you guys the outcome on that. In the first year, we dropped the out-of-pocket loss costs from $437,000 to $13,500, and we pegged our bonus at 25 grand. And we had a very happy client who paid us $100,000. But, I don't always make it less. Sometimes you're going to have to do more heavy lifting. Sometimes you're going to have to bring in actual experts. If I need noise studies done or ergonomic studies done of a workstation to make sure that a manufacturing floor is set up correctly, that's way outside of my skill set. I'm going to hire a third party to come in and do that. And I'm going to put a number on that in my proposal. And that's all going to go back to the service fee. So it's just way more transparent, to be honest with you. Your client finally understands what they're paying for, and they can hold you accountable to delivering it. Right now, a commission's a black box. They don't even know what that percentage is in many cases, which is why it's one of the first things I identify in a meeting. I want to take what I think they're paying, the assumed commission levels, and let them know how much they're spending to have somebody handle the risk management department of their operation and ask them if they're happy with their employees' performance, because we're all employees of the people we work for, whether we want to believe that or not.
Also from Ryan, right? If my commercial background is small commercial under 50K, a lot of bops with workers' comp and sometimes their commercial real estate. I want to move up. What's the best advice?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people get confused. I do talk about workers' comp a lot, but my advice to anybody who's going to go into something is, number one, know what you're doing. Be as educated in it as possible, but also find those areas of our business where you can get a lot of data, right? The reason I like the workers' comp so much is I can get a lot of free data from the state of Florida. I can go on to NCCI and spend $6 to pull the experience mod, and I know what that is before the meeting, before anybody sends a question that's telling me you can't do that. Yes, you can. NCCI makes it very, very difficult for you to do anything that you're not supposed to do. So if they don't challenge you to pay $6 for the mod, it's okay that you buy it. It's the worksheet that you have to have an authorization letter for, not the mod itself. So if I know that up front, that's really powerful information, because I could go to cold call somebody knowing they have a 1.5 mod and they may tell me their workers' compensation's under control. I can slide that mod across the table at them and say, give them the old Maury Povich. Yeah, the tests say differently, right? Our tests have concluded that your mod's a 1.5 and you're paying at least 50% more than the average peer in your industry for workers' comp based on past performance. So when you have those conversations, it's a whole lot easier. It's also a lot easier when you have data to construct your scripts, right? I think maybe last time I was on here, one of the concepts I talked about with you guys was the concept of getting somebody to know, right? We're so focused on getting people to yes. There's actually a sales book out there called Get to Yes. The problem with that is yes is a power move. Yes means, yes is a power move for the salesperson, but the reality is the way the human brain is wired, people feel in control of the conversation when they tell you no. Don't believe me, guys? When your wife tells you no on Saturday night, how easy is it? It's not, right? So at the end of the day, somebody's going to tell you no, no, no. If you know how to formulate your questions the right way to get them to give you a no, you're the puppet master at that point, right? You're asking them the questions you want to ask them. You're getting them to say no, but it's answering the question in the way you want them to. And that person feels in control of the conversation. So ultimately you can go back and get what you want. So I'm going to give you guys the number one script that I've ever used on workers' compensation. I'm going to give it to you right now. If you're not listening, perk up, write it down, go back and watch this again. I will tell you, this script has resulted in an appointment 100% of the time it's been used, with the caveat, we still have people hang up on us, okay, when we call. If we can have the conversation, if we can get this out of our mouth, we are going to book an appointment from it. So here's what I want you to think about. You got 7 seconds to gain trust, get somebody's attention, and begin the conversation. And I want to get them to know we're going to have an account that's in the middle market. We're going to use that 1.5 mod that I talked about. We know that 1.0 is average. And if you go above that, then you're below average. If you go below that, then you're above average. Okay. You get a credit on your rates for good performance. You get a surcharge on your rates for bad performance. So we know that if somebody has a mod of 1.5, they're paying at least 50% more than average for their industry, because average is 1.0. So when we have the conversation, it's going to go something like this. Hey, this is David from Florida Risk Partners. I know you weren't expecting my call. Would you hate me if I told you this is going to be about insurance? And of course, they're going to say, well, no, I'm not going to hate you, but I really don't want to talk about it. Listen, I promise I'll make it quick. I just have a question for you. Are you happy that you're paying at least 50% more than the average peer in the industry for your workers' compensation? Well, no, they're not happy. And if they are, I'm going to cut bait and leave. The only time they're going to be happy is if the lady comes back and says, well, yeah, I'm happy. I was paying 220% more last year. You know, you got to know some of that stuff, but we're going to go with the first question. The second question is, in the last 3 to 5 years, has anybody come in and used software to validate that your experience mod is even correct, let alone, you know, show you where you could be if you were best in class? And we know that if their mod's at a 1.5, they're going to give us a no there. So the hook is, well, since you're not happy that you're paying at least 50% and nobody's come in the last 3 to 5 years to audit with software, wouldn't you agree it makes sense for us to spend 20 minutes coming in to show you how we've saved companies just like yours tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on their total cost of risk? People, you can't give me 2 no's and not give me the yes. You just can't do it. Now, you might get something like, oh, you know, I would, but, you know, my friend is my insurance agent. Yeah, you know, and oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for bothering you today. Let me go. You know what my response is? Wow. You're an awesome friend. You're spending $50,000 a year more on your workers' compensation so that your friend can represent you. I don't know of a friend in my Rolodex that's going to pay me 50 grand a year to be their friend. I don't have a single one. In fact, it might be a better option for you, since you're paying your friend 15,000 of that 150 in commission. Just stroke them a check for 15 grand a year to be your friend. Hire us anyhow. We'll drop your total cost to risk, take commission on the deal. You'll spend less money and everybody wins. Right? But the problem is people don't have the guts to say what needs to be said. I'm fearless. I don't care. If I piss them off and they don't invite me back, that's fine. You're not my client right now anyhow. I'm still going to tell you like it is, and I'm going to absolutely go for the jugular every time.
Beautiful. Is this some of the stuff that you teach, and I assume it is, in your Killing Commercial Insurance sales training?
It is. It is.
We didn't talk much about that.
Yeah, we do. We have, so Killing Commercial is actually, a lot of people get that confused and think that it's a training program. It's actually an entire online community and ecosystem that's supported by a mobile app and a social network that's proprietary to the group. We have static content library in there so that when we teach our marketing systems and everything to people, they have the ability to use the exact things that we're using. They can rebrand, recolor so that it matches their brand guide and all of that. But the real value in what we bring is the community, the incredible community that we've built, man. I mean, I am literally a mouthpiece for about 400 users in that community right now. And that's really my only role. There are some really amazing people that are in there. And it's just absolutely one of the most humbling things in the world when I go to a conference or when we have our annual event for our community. And I just see the relationships that have been forged, that people who have never would have known each other, that are now lifelong friends and honestly root to see each other win, and will do whatever they can to support them. So yes, there's a learning management system in there that trains how to sell in the process. We are not a product, an insurance training group. You can go to the National Alliance and get that. You can go to the institutes and get that. What I'm going to show you how to do is take what you need to know from a behavior standpoint, apply that, hold you accountable to go out and get the results you need to get to change your family tree for generations to come.
Good stuff. Well, David, man, thank you for coming on today. This has been an absolute pleasure. Knocked it out of the park as always. Other than maybe your YouTube channel or Facebook, what are some ways that maybe agents can get in touch with you, tie into you, pick your brain some more?
If you go, honestly, like sort of the warehouse for everything is killingcommercial.com. I want people, you can go there. You can access the YouTube channel from there. You can access Power Producers Podcast from there. You can access, there's a tab for webinars that's there that are free. While we do have premium content, and it certainly is an investment to join the paid community, I give away the farm, man. There is so much stuff that I give people absolutely free, that if you go there, you can learn a ton. I mean, I did one that would change everybody's life on this call, I can promise you, on how to use quote bind issue products to build your agency with passive revenue streams. All you got to do is go to killingcommercial.com, throw a / and the letters QBI. There's 7 or 8 webinars in there, and we walk you right through the strategy of how you can actually get paid for leads that go into your CRM that you round into bigger opportunities. So if you go to killingcommercial.com, everything's there. You can contact me from there. Follow me on social. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere, man. Software makes it so easy to get the content pushed out. But if you can't find me, whew,
you ain't looking.
You got to be trying.
Understood. One last question, because this is the third time I've now seen this either pop up in the comments, and obviously it's hanging in your background there in neon. What the hell is hashtag CBK?
So I'm going to give you guys a homework assignment. You can find out what CBK is. If you go, and it's actually, this is really cool. You guys will want to do this anyhow. If you go to or if you go to dirty-130.com, that's the landing page for my book. If you go and you scroll about halfway down, the number one thing about my book that I get the most comments on is that right there. It's the cover, right? It's the tattoos on my forearms, the dirt. That's me. And I made that. I made the cover myself. I actually do a video on there that shows you the thought process behind the cover. It shows my kids spraying me down with water, throwing dirt on my shirt, throwing dirt on my face, and all of that stuff. But I also talk about where CBK came from. It actually stands for cold-blooded killer, but there's a story behind it. And that moniker was given to me by the very first account that I ever wrote when I got my license, and it just sort of stuck with me. I told him, I asked him, I said, why did you hire me, man? He goes, because you're an absolute savage. He said, you're a cold-blooded killer who has no friends. He said, that's the guy that I want fighting for me in the marketplace. And it stuck, man. It stuck with me ever since. And so when we launched Killing Commercial, I needed to throw something in there that had a little bit of spice and flavor to it. And that's the hashtag that we all use.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, tons of knowledge. I even have people that aren't even in PNC that are commenting saying, wow, thank you. This has been an excellent call. So thank you so much for that. Guys, thank you all for tuning in. I mean, we're here every Tuesday laying it out with people of this caliber, bringing you stuff that you can use to learn and grow your business and elevate your whole practice. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We got Jessie Park coming in, who's a phenomenal entrepreneur herself. You guys know her, and we'll see you then again on Tuesday Training. Have a great day.